It's Boche. For the camera.
Not bocce.
No.
It says bocce.
People that don't play Boche.
It's Bocce.
Say Bocce.
I grew up with bocce, but I don't want to make a black and white answer with that because I like to stay, kind of like Switzerland.
I don't know, somehow the East Coast and the West Coast call it bocce, which just hits a nerve to most Italians because it's bocce, really, and it's kind of softened up to be bocce, but when you hear bocce, it just, So it's bocce, and if you ever have a translator and you put in there B-O-C-C-E, it'll say bocce or bocce, not bocce. No A in there, no A at all.
He says it's an Italian game. I did some research on it, and I told him it was actually invented in Westphalia, Germany, because I'm German, he's Italian. But he did some more research, and he said, no, it's an Italian game.
Whatever they say in Italy, and I don't, actually someone was asking this earlier today, and I need to look it up. We need to definitively answer this question. But whatever they say in Italy is what I'm going with. I think that's bocce.
It's bocce.
It's bocce. Everybody who's not everybody, but a lot of people who aren't Italian say it's bocce because they don't speak Italian and they don't know Italian words.
So Uncle Bill's the most Italian of all of us Italians, right? So he wants to make sure that we do it right to our Italian heritage, and it's bocce to him. So if you show up and you say bocce, first we know you're not supposed to be here, second you're out.
It's not bocce, that's candy.
Is it bocce or bocce? If you're Italian, it's bocce. If you're not, it's either. It's a fun game, and if you don't know how to play it, you should learn.
Generally, before the tournament, when we have a group of people here, I get up and welcome everyone and say, welcome to the 12th, 13th, 14th annual Cousin Philly. And then I teach them how to say the word bocce, like we've talked about. All right, kids, how do you pronounce B-O-C-C-E? And they all yell, bocce. Okay, y'all remember. Now, if you hear anybody that says bocce today, they're out of the tournament. So,
He could try, but that's supposed to be a rule. But he'd have to, he and I would have to talk about it. Just kidding, Uncle Bill. I'm not kidding, Uncle Bill. It's bocce. For real. It's bocce.
It's bocce, I believe. Is it bocce or bocce?
I don't know, you have to tell me.
Mike! Is it bocce or bocce? Sorry, Uncle Bill.
You can say it however you want. It's just a fun game to play, and it's just a fun excuse to get together and hang out with our family and remember Phil.
Bocce. Bocce.
Well, we have the annual bocce tournament, and that's in memory of my son Philip and Sarah and Anthony's and Nick's brother.
It's one of the two main occasions that the big Frisella family gets together. One is Christmas and the bocce tournament. I guess Easter is another one, but it's sort of the premier athletic event of the Frisella family community, I guess.
We are celebrating the memory of our beloved cousin.
My Uncle Bill goes to great lengths to put on an awesome event. It gives us an opportunity to one, come together as a family, but two, remember somebody who's an awesome Frisella, somebody who's a great friend of mine growing up, somebody I spent millions of hours with doing all types of good and bad things, but gives an opportunity to take a special time and reflect upon Philly.
This has been going on, I think this is the 13th year. This is the 13th annual. And to be involved in it, to be a player, you have to be a cousin of Philip. So if you're a cousin of Philip, you're in, but then you can ask whoever you want. You can ask your cameraman, you can ask Joe Galiba down the street or whoever. Or you can ask your cousin or your husband or whatever.
My dad has a very generous and genuine heart, and he really just wants the family to get together and enjoy each other's company. I think that's what he experienced growing up, and that's what he wants for his kids and nephews and grandkids and the entire family.
Well, he's a super generous guy, and he really, really loves to focus on these kind of gatherings, bringing everyone together. So I think that he does a good job of contributing to the closeness of the family.
Big turnout, good turnout this year. Weather's fantastic, couldn't be more warm. We're in the second round here, and things are starting to get a little bit competitive. You know, first round is all kind of friendly. Now even though we're family, it does get a little bit competitive.
Well, you have a little white ball. It's smaller than the bocce balls, and it's called a polina. So you flip a coin to start the game, and whoever wins, they get the polina, and they throw it down the court. Now, after they throw it down the court, they have the bocce ball. The same person that threw the polina throws the bocce ball, and they try to get it as close as they can to the polina. So let's say the first player got 3 feet in front of the polina. So their opposing team throws their ball now and tries to get closer to the polina than the first team.
And the object is to get your balls as close to that yellow ball as possible.
So if they have 2 balls closer to the polina than their opponents, then they get 2 points. They have 3 balls closer than their opponent, they get 3 points, and so on.
We played a 7.
20 to the middle, 16 and a half to the middle. So red's closer.
Red 1.
My job is official referee, so I think I got elected to this years ago, and the family views me as an impartial uncle compared to all the other uncles. So, and even when my family members are playing, it boils down to the ruler, the tape. 54. Chart 54. Screen's a bit closer.
So there is other rules, and if the team that's throwing the polina throws it so hard that it hits the backboard, then you take the polina up and you give it to the other team, and they get to throw the polina. Now the polina is very important because some people play really good short games. Some people play long games. Now me and Elena's strategy was to play the long game because most people aren't good at the long game. So we practice all week on the long game. So our strategy was to throw the polina as far as we can without hitting the backboard. So, and it worked. I guess it worked. We won.
I don't know about the first place trophy, but I want to get second or third.
It gets pretty competitive. Certainly when the later it gets, the more, to the winning rounds, people get really aggressive, but they have fun at the same time. But, you want to win. If you sit out here for 12 hours, you get that close. So.
I won 2 years ago. You're looking at the not reigning champion, but the champion of 2 years ago.
There was a big upset. Actually, my grandson Ben and my wife Celeste upset Andy and Rebecca. And Andy and Rebecca have a real history here. They won, I think, 3 years in a row. So they kind of had a dynasty going and locked down that condo for 3 years straight. And when they drew Andy and Rebecca, they were like, oh, how'd this happen? But first round, they knocked him out. Ben, first year he's played, so him and my wife Celeste knocked out some of the top runners in the competition here. So.
And every year we add a little more to the prize money. First place is a week in Destin, and that's worth about probably $3,500 if you had to go rent a place on the ocean. And it's always the winner leaves the same year, same summer. Like in August, the winner goes down there, so they don't have to wait a year or 2 years. It's almost like instant satisfaction, And then second place is $600, so there's 2 players on a team, so that's $300 a piece. And then third place is $400, so that's $200 a piece. So that's where we are right now.
Well, today, there's been a lot of upsets today already. So one of the team that's won the most, our cousin Rebecca and her husband Andy, they're like 4-time champions, and they were overthrown early by a weaker team. Sorry, Aunt Celeste, but it's true. You guys got lucky. It's the biggest upset in Boche history. So that being said, I don't know. There's been a couple of other upsets also, so it seems like it could be a new champion this year.
We have about 30, 35 teams. I think this year we have 32 teams this year. And Philip had 46 cousins. So a lot of players are potentially able to play, I guess.
Sometimes you're good, sometimes you're bad. It depends on who you're playing. You know, a lot of them play a lot, so it's just more or less it's just fun and just come out and celebrate.
To me, this event means keeping our family together. So this started after our cousin Phil died, and that year, actually, like 3 family members died, and it was a rough year. And we kind of started this event that year, but also just random family functions. We've always been a really tight family, but as we grow and like my cousins have kids, you know, it gets harder to stay together, and events like this really keep us together and keep the family tight.
They all want to come in first place. So they are very competitive.
My husband and I were cruelly eliminated in a first round battle, but we'll be staying to the end to watch because it's just fun to, and because it is family, it doesn't get super competitive. You kind of want everyone to do well, even the people you're playing. You're like, hey, that was a great shot. It's not that cutthroat. At least for me, it's not, because I'm usually eliminated in the first round. Even though one year Tom and I made it to the final, but he had too many beers and then through the game. I was so mad. But now I'm like, whatever.
So I got eliminated, but I'm back in. I know. So my dad and I got knocked out, but then my brother's wife doesn't want to play, so I'm in.
Well, there's usually some favorites. The Rashes, they're always very, very competitive. That's my sister Mary and her husband and her kids. I mean, they play softball, they play baseball, they play soccer. They were brought up. They have a sports field in their yard, so they're really, really athletic. And they're always in there. And then my son Nicholas and my sister-in-law Jeannie, they're always up there too. But this year I think the favorite might be me and Elena. Right, Elena? So anyway, they're always up there. And then my nephew John Paul Frisella, him and his partners are always up there too. So there's 3 or 4 that usually are in the top maybe 6 teams. And then sometimes we get just kind of a, I don't know, just somebody out of the blue that wins it.
It's about the memories. Boche's fun too, though. Don't get me wrong.
Even after all these years, it's still real emotional. And but yeah, Philip was he was the youngest. He was the baby, and he was quite a character at times, but a great kid. He had a dynamic personality. Everybody loved him, and he always stood up for the underdog and always helping people. And so he lived life to the fullest. So he was 22 when he passed away, and I mean, he did a lot of stuff in 22 years, which really makes me feel good because he got to experience so much. And he was just beginning to buy a house, and he was fixing up his house, and somehow he was hooking up a fluorescent fixture, and he got electrocuted and passed away. So we keep his memory though out there. So listen to what we have. We have the Boche tournament, the Cousin Philly Boche tournament. We have a golf tournament in his name. It's called the Philly. It's on Columbus Day every year. And now we, for the last 12 years, we have manufactured a line of light fixtures called Philip Austin. So he is living on for sure.
You know, it's been over a decade that he's been gone, but you know, we're still gathering to celebrate his honor, and that means a lot to me, and I think to the rest of our nuclear family, and to the entire family as well.
It's awesome. It's great that we still celebrate his life and, you know, still think about him all the time. And you know, it's great that Bill does these things and brings everybody together, and so it's awesome.
You know, it puts a smile on my face that everybody's here, and it's another chance to remember my brother.
You know, it's a great time to come see family and hang out and tell Philly stories.
Phil was a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy, he had a lot of momentum. He always put 100% into everything, and he just loved going full speed.
It's so nice. You know, it's good to, it's hard, honestly, to start, because you start thinking about it, but it's great to keep his memory alive, because he was a one of a kind, man. There was nobody as crazy and as just full life. He lived it up.
I knew Phil when I moved into Health and Steam when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. We became friends right away. He came down to my house and came down to the neighbor's house, knocked on the wrong door, and they're like, no, he lives over there, and then came to my house, and we became best friends ever since.
Oh my gosh, he just was a big personality, super charismatic guy, and he was he was fiercely loyal, and at the same time he was stood up for people that weren't, you know, kind of the underdog kind of person. He was just a really neat guy. He filled up a room when he'd come in. He was great with kids. I wish my kids knew him. He did a lot of living in his 22 years. He was handsome and charismatic and had a lot of lady friends. And at his funeral, I don't know if this is a bad story to tell, but you know, everybody gets to walk by the casket, and it was like girl after girl after girl, like sobbing, and I was like, sorry, I don't know what. But yeah, he was kind of a wild man, but he was very soft-hearted and just a loving, sweet guy. And I was really proud to be his sister. I really was.
So my Uncle Bill at his old house, he had a bocce court. I guess he had it built. I mean, that would make sense. And I don't know, we just randomly, the year that Phil died, we said, let's put that bocce court to good use. So we started the bocce tournament.
You know, family's first, and that was a big thing for Phil. Always cared about his family, taking care of everybody, and you know, so I think keeping family together is a major thing, certainly with the Italian community.
Phil was really athletic. He was super brave, smart, wild, you know, fearless, fun. We had a lot of fun, getting into trouble a lot too, you know, but overall just, you know, loving, loyal, fun.
We were playing in this men's hockey league, and I asked Phil if he wanted to play. He was a pretty good hockey player. And him and his buddy Rory, I think you guys interviewed already, they were like, oh yeah, we'll play. And they both came up and played. This is like a men's, just, you know, for fun league. And the next thing you know, Phil and Rory are like fighting the whole team. Some guy was in the penalty box, and Phil literally pulled him out of the penalty box and started beating him up. And then Rory jumped in, because Rory's kind of a baby. He needed Phil to kind of carry him.
So Phil and I grew up together. We were the same age coming up, and so as cousins, you know, we saw each other a lot. His dad and my mom, brother and sister, and as we got into our teenage years, we got really close, and that lasted, it grew into a really close friendship into our early 20s.
Yeah, he was a good guy. I always described him as being like Frank Sinatra, having like an entourage and like giving people money and, you know, living large.
It's really hard, man. It's hard to talk about even now. He was a good friend. But so he died while I was in Iraq, actually. So I missed his funeral, but I finally got home and was able to see everybody, which was nice. But he just was he would always look out for you. He was always looking out for me. And he just always was there for you. I remember before I left, he was so worried. You know, he was just so pissed. He's like, you shouldn't be going there. Like, you shouldn't be going there. Why did you end up in this position? He's like, you don't do anything stupid. You stay hidden. Don't go anywhere, you know? He was like worried because And then that was the last time I talked to him. Was that talk? I remember that most about him.
I mean, Phil would, he was a fun guy to hang out with. He would do anything for you. There was one time where I got in a little bit of a fight and he came in and, rushed to my aid, and he was just very protective and loyal and just a great person to be with.
My favorite one is when he pooped in his pants, but I don't think I'll tell that one. We were at the Lake of the Ozarks. We were driving go-karts, and I was really super competitive, and he was too young to ride them, so he was at an overpass watching, and I was leading all the family pack because the kids that could ride were riding, and he was watching. I was turning a corner, and this little kid pushed me over, and my cart flipped, and I flew out of the cart, and I landed, and my sundress was over my head, and my shoes were still in the cart. It was a pretty bad accident. They stopped all the stuff. They wanted to call the ambulance, but I was like, no. And when I went up the stairs, after the accident happened, he was sobbing, and he ran up to me, and he's like, when you were flying through the air, your eyes caught mine, and it was like you were saying, goodbye, Phil. It's like, oh, buddy. Because he was I was 16 and he was probably 11. He was always trying to be this tough kid, but he was so sensitive and emotional. So that's one of my favorite little stories.
But there's a lot of really funny stories too. There's a lot of really hilarious, just ridiculous. Like, you just can't even believe the stuff. I can't believe it now, the stuff that we did. It's just crazy. I'm sure everyone knows those stories. A lot of people know a lot of those stories. I mean, it's endless. The crazy, laws being broken and chasing girls, and that part of our life was so much fun. That's how we became close. But there was a lot, more to it than that.
He was an awesome guy. I mean, he was my best friend. I always tell people he's the best friend I'll ever have, I told my wife that and she got pissed. That's how it goes, We were at a dance, a school dance, a NARICS CBC, well, not CBC, but a NARICS dance. And I remember we were in the car, ready to go in, and everybody else had already gone to the restaurant. And he was just Phil and I remember we cut, this is kind of crazy, but we cut our fingers and we held them together because we were crazy, stupid 16-year-old boys.
What was Phil like? Phil was a wild child. I mean, he's a free spirit, unbelievable human. He's just a good kid. He was a kid when growing up, that allowed you to test your boundaries because he forced and pushed on the limits, and we had tons of fun.
I'll give a PG-13 one. There's a lot of good. Philip did a lot of good in his life, but he was also a little bit mischievous. And so he had been grounded from his car, and my father had left, and he convinced me that, he was just going to move it out into the street. And so I gave him the keys, and it had been snowing, and then he ran it into a retaining wall and scratched the entire side of it. So not only was he in trouble, but I was in trouble because I was supposed to be in charge. But it was pretty hard to be in charge of Philip because he was a free spirit and he did what he wanted.
I really wish he was around to be an uncle because I think it would have been an awesome uncle.
It was the year 2001, I believe, and we were working up at Metro at the Baldwin store. Philip, Joe, my brother Dan, and myself, and we decided to go down to the Rams were in the playoffs, and we decided to go down to New Orleans. But we were all broke college kids, so we needed a loaner. So we went over to Uncle Bill's house in Webster and asked him if he could, front our paycheck for the work we were doing over at Metro, so that we could get tickets. And he reluctantly agreed. And then, as a concerned father, he asked, "How are you getting down there?" So we decided that we were going to take the Greyhound bus. So we got down to the Greyhound station, and immediately Phil was just like, "I'm not doing this." He's somewhat of an antsy guy. Like, he didn't want to, I don't think he wanted to give up that control and sit on a bus for 24 hours. So we went back to his house and got his car, which was a bit of an older car, and we drove it all the way down to New Orleans. Had a great time. The Rams ended up losing. They almost came back and won though. And then on the way back, Uncle Bill's concerns were warranted. Philip lost fifth gear, so we had to drive all the way home on Highway 55, going about 45, 50 miles per hour.
Philip allowed us to have a real childhood, you know, whether it was, you know, BMX and biking across town, or tailgating in cars, or bottle rocket fights, or just anything. You know, he allowed us the opportunity because Philip was always pushing the limits, and he was a great friend or a brother growing up. And quite honestly, you know, I think, you know, I had the childhood that I have and that I reflect upon and tell my guys about because of my cousin Philip. You know, because he pushed the limits all the time. We had a lot of fun doing it.
One of the first, we used to hang out a lot when we were kids, but one of the first times I remember hanging out with Phil, we were at Uncle Bill's house on Helfenstein. And we were up in Phil's room. There's a little office back off to the side of his room. We were up there playing Neo Geo. It was Christmas time. We had just received this Neo Geo. Just a story to tell you, like, core, like, who Phil is in a nutshell. He's little. We're little kids. We're probably 7, 8 years old, and he's got this Neo Geo. We're playing this game, Baseball All-Stars, all day. I mean, all weekend. We hung out probably Saturday, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, all weekend. And Sunday night comes and I'm going home, and he's like, hey, you want to borrow my Neo Geo? And I was like, seriously? Like, you just got this for Christmas. Like, that's in a nutshell, that's Phil. You know, like, he'll give you, if he knew you loved something, he'd give it to you. You know what I mean? Just a giver, just a caring guy. I mean, just a, you know, that's Phil in a nutshell. He loves this thing, you love this thing. Hey, do you want to borrow this for the week? You come back next weekend, bring it back. And he let me borrow his Neo Geo that he literally had gotten that Christmas. So I mean, it just, nutshell, like that's, you know, that's the kind of guy Phil was. He, just a giver, caring giver, you know?
It's like, how do you pick them? But, okay, one night we went to Zia's, and Uncle Bill had a deal where they somehow had money to spend at Zia's restaurant on the hill. And Phil, man, we would go down there and like live it up big time and order up, you know, steak and lobster, and I mean, everything expensive, the most expensive wine. And then, you know, so then after we ate these big expensive meals and drank all this wine, he started ordering tequila, which they don't, you know, you're 21 or 20 or 19 or something, like you want to do shots, and like this is a fancy Italian place. So he ends up, we do like 3 or 4 rounds of tequila. There's 12, we're so loud. Everyone around us is like, who are these guys? And Phil ends up just puking right there. He just throws up right there in the middle of the restaurant, just like freaking explosive. It's a disaster. Anyway, so he immediately comes out, he brings like 4 people, they clean it all up, you know, real good, and like make it, you know, like, so it's like it never happened as quickly as possible, and he's really embarrassed, he's really upset that that he puked, because, you know, we're trying to be big ballers here, not a couple of, you know, bunch of chumps. So he goes ahead and like everyone around us, which it ends up being like 15 or 20 people, he buys them all whatever drink they want. A round of drinks for everyone, a round of drinks for everyone. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I mean, it was just one of the funnest nights, man. We laughed so hard, oh my God. Just how hard I laughed when he puked, I will always see just like, I was like, dude, he doesn't look good. And it's just like, you know, white tablecloth, white napkin. That was insane.
A lot of fireworks stories. You know, it was a big event for me when he came up to my college graduation, and that's something I remember really well. Times down at the farm, yeah.
I mean, there's so many different things. Just miss him. Wish he was here to be here with us, but you know, keep remembering him and carry it on.
Oh man, I really I wish he was still here. That's it.
He'd probably cry, honestly. He was he was so emotional. He'd be honored. He'd be honored. He would definitely cry though. He would for sure cry. He would. He was a big crier.
For dinner, we're having ravioli, and we're having Italian beef and giardiniera, hot giardiniera. And for the ravioli sauce, I kind of made this yesterday, but now I'm finishing off and warming it up. Gonna let it cook for an hour and a half or so. And then I'm gonna put some fresh basil on top and let it cook another 10 minutes or so.
My grandpa, he's really nice and he goes out of his way to do a lot of nice things for us. Oh, it's always really fun and the whole family gets together, so you get to see people that you don't usually get to see.
I was always brought up where family comes first and how important family is, and I think it is really important. I'm just trying to keep that family unit, especially this generation, which is expanded, together. And this is one way to do it. We do Christmas too, and my sister Mary does Easter and invites the whole family, so the family is pretty close, and I like that.
It's simple. If you lose, you win because you did your best. That's what Uncle Bill does. That's what he brings all the best out of all of us.
He brings everyone together in a wonderful way that time pictures will last forever.
He likes to keep the Italian tradition going on in the family and the grandkids so they know what their roots are. Sicilian, Italian,
As I grew up, I always just assumed that family meant the same thing to everyone, but I think there are certain cultures where it's just more important, and I think an Italian culture just is, and it's just how I've always grown up. When I was a kid, we did these kinds of events, and now it's nice having this be a part of our kids' lives too.
Some of us live really far away from here. Some of us live close, and it's really nice to get everyone together. It's just fun.
We've got a big family, and it's very rare to have, so many close first cousins. So it's precious time you get to spend with each other.
My father came over first. That was in 1904, something like that. It was the year he was here for the World's Fair, when the World's Fair was in St. Louis. He worked, and 5 years later he went back and married my mother, and then they came back to St. Louis. He had found a place to live, and that she was expecting her first child on the way here. And she said the trip was unbelievable because it was, she was expecting, and the sea was very rough. But they settled in St. Louis. My father had an ice and coal business. He delivered ice and coal to people. That was when we did not have, or they did not have refrigerators. By the time I was born, they had refrigerators, but they had, and then he had 5 brothers that came over also. And they all had their businesses. Frisella Moving and Storage. Then one uncle went into that. And then my father had his business. When the ice wasn't very profitable anymore, then he sold coal. And then of course, then he went to work for City Forestry with his trucks. So, and he retired from there.
Our family's pretty unique though. I mean, I have 45 first cousins, so there's not a whole lot of families out there that have that, but
I grew up with 7 brothers, and I was the youngest. And 5 of my brothers were all in the Second World War. They all served in the Second World War. My mother had her little flag in the window with the 5 stars on it. And they all came home safely, thank goodness, because all of them. Bill's father went to Pacific, and over in the Pacific, he was in the service, plus he had a full-time job at night when he was off duty. And so when he came home, he started the electric company. And yeah, he was a hard worker. And I know he held 2 full-time, but they kept having children, and he had 2 full-time jobs then for a long time.
Uncle Bill's very proud of his Italian roots, so like he passes on the family tradition, being proud of who you are and where you come from. So his father came over from Italy, so it's very, very important to him.
I mean, family being important has been ingrained in me since I was a little boy. both through my mother and my father. Oftentimes we'd go to my grandma's and just hang out with our cousins for hours on end.
When I got married, my maid of honor was my cousin. She's one of my best friends, and I think that goes for a lot of my siblings as well. I mean, Philip had lots of best friend cousins, and I hope that for my kids too. And so, hopefully, beyond my dad's generation, we stay close.
I think probably, I don't remember my grandpa because he died when I was young, but I like to think that he instilled this family bond, tightness in all of us, in our parents, and they passed it on to us, and we try and pass that on to our kids now.
Having a big family is very challenging. It really is. But the children grow up together, and they have a great time together. And Bill's an example with all his siblings and the nephews and nieces and grandchildren, and so they have a great time.
Bill's he's a cog. He's he brings it together. For him to keep these things going is awesome, because we all see each other one more time a year. Uncle Bill loved Phil. Phil looked up to Uncle Bill like no other. I know they were extremely close. Extremely close. They hung out a lot.
To be honest, I don't think this is about the game. It's about hanging out. Like, you'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm out. I'm glad I'm out. Now I get to go drink or enjoy the day." So I think the actual Bocce game is just a excuse to get us all together and have a party.
Who else does this? Nobody. Uncle Bill.
So 3 red.
And Christie is a champion.
3 red.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Uncle Bill. Thank you.
What a night, huh?
Yeah, it was awesome. What a great day.
It's off to
What a great
Destin,
day.
Florida.
Yeah, can't wait.
It's the second week of August. Can you make it?
I think so. You think we can go?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
High five.
Thank you. Super excited.
Yeah, it's great.
This is our second time winning, so it's looking
Maria, what do you
forward to
think?
family vacation.
What do you think?
Yeah, I eat it.
So we started with 32 teams, and you are the winners. So that's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.